Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'll show you how to replace the fuel line on your Stihl MS290 chainsaw. The same procedure will apply if you have a Stihl MS390 chainsaw as well. And here's the chainsaw I'll be doing this on today. It's got a severe fuel leak. Some of the symptoms you may experience if you have a fuel leak is that your chainsaw will not run properly. It may be starving for fuel continually and running very lean. And also one of the most obvious signs will be that you will have a fuel leak. Now here's what the fuel line looks like for these saws, and on this chainsaw here the fuel line is not punctured. What's happening is it's leaking where the grommet here fits into the chainsaw. So it is a fitted line that goes on this chainsaw. You just don't want to use any fuel line out there. And I do recommend that you use a Stihl OEM fuel line for this repair. I have used aftermarket lines in the past and they don't last too long before they start leaking again. And by the way, the part number for the fuel line today is 1127-358-7705. And you can tell it's an OEM Stihl line because you can see the Stihl logo right on the fuel line. It's much better rubber than the aftermarket ones. So to get started in the repair, what I'm going to do first is empty out the fuel tank. Now at this point I'm going to remove the air filter cover. And now I'll remove the air filter. Now at this point I'm going to remove the throttle linkage. Just depress the trigger like this. And now you can just pop the linkage out of here. And now you can take it completely out just by twisting it like this. And here it is. Now I'm going to remove the two 8mm nuts holding the carburetor on. Now remove the flange. And now you can pry the carburetor out carefully. If the fuel line is still attached over here, just push it out of the connector. And now the carburetor is completely off. Now I'm going to remove this piece of plastic here out of the way. And here's where the fuel line is. It's attached right to the fuel tank down there, and that is exactly where it's leaking when the fuel tank is full. Now at this point I'm going to flip the saw over like this. I'm going to reach down in there and grab the fuel filter. Now disconnect the fuel filter from the line here. Now with a good pair of needle nose pliers, just grab the fuel line, just pull up, and it's going to come right out of its grommet or the hole on the fuel tank. And here's the fuel line. You can see it's still intact. However, as I mentioned, it's leaking right around here. That's because the rubber deteriorates over the years and gets hard. Now what you want to do is examine the hole there before you put the fuel line back in. You want to make sure it's clean all around that area. Now when you install this fuel line, what you want to do is line up this notch here, totally facing this way like that. And I'll show you once the fuel line's in exactly how this has to be positioned. So now what you need to do is insert this part here into the fuel tank. And you can gently reach in and grab the fuel line with a pair of pliers just to help you get it through. And I'm going to grab the line again right in the tank here, and I'm just going to pry down on it just to get the grommet to go right in the tank. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to push down with a dull object like a torque screwdriver here. And just push right on the grommet with your dull object. And it actually went in there quite easily. And here's how the notch on the fuel line grommet should be lined up. Exactly like that. Now I'm going to reach in and grab the fuel line again to install the fuel filter. Push the filter back in. Now what you want to do is insert the fuel line over here. Then when you install the carburetor, it's lined up with the connector. And if the wire has come off of the mechanism over here, just put it back into its groove. When you reinstall, the carburetor goes in this way. This is the connector for the fuel line, this one for the impulse line. So now just insert the carburetor in there and make sure the connector is going into the fuel line there, and that the other connector at the bottom here is going into the impulse line. Now push it right in. Now you want to install this tank vent in its proper location. Just insert the line over here. So what you want to do is put it in like this. Get it into the groove here in the orange part. And make sure the rubber part is on the screws of the carb here. This part here goes on the idle screw of the carb. So this rubber here does protect the carburetor and the screws from getting full of dirt. And they do make it easier when you go to adjust the carb because they kind of guide you in. And now you want to install the throttle linkage. So now what you need to do is reach in like this, get it in the hole here. Now press on the throttle lever. Now you want to insert the linkage right in the groove here. Push down until you hear it click. And now just try out the throttle to make sure it's connected properly. And it should all be moving quite easily like this. Now you want to install this flange over here, the two 8mm nuts. And now with your 8mm socket, you want to tighten them both up evenly. I'm not quite sure of the torque specs, but just put it fairly snug. Now double check that everything's working fine. Test out the choke here. It's closing good, so that's alright. Now reinstall the air filter. Now I'm going to reinstall this part over here. When it's winter time, I put the part with the holes here up top. When it's summertime, I put this inside here. And it's quite easy. You just pop it up again, put it in either direction. There's more airflow when it's in like this, less airflow when it's like this. So because it's winter here in Canada and it's quite cold, I'm just going to leave it like that. And I'm going to install the air filter cover. And I'm going to put the fuel back in. And I'm going to top up the fuel tank a bit just to test the integrity of the new line. And by the way, if the fuel cap is completely off, you want to insert the plastic ball over here, right in that groove there. So you want to bring it below the groove. And just pull on it to lock it in. And now just secure the fuel cap. And by the way guys, if you do have a leak on your Stihl chainsaw with a fuel cap like this, make sure to check the condition of your cap because they often leak fuel. And if they do leak fuel, you're best to just replace it with a new one. Now when you're done fixing your chainsaw, you can put it on its side like this just to make sure that the grommet part on the fuel line is creating a good seal between it and the fuel tank. Before I replace the fuel line, if I had the chainsaw on its side like this, it would just leak like a sieve. And if you look at the grommet part of the fuel line there coming out of the fuel tank, you can see that it's nice and dry. And that's what you want to see. And it looks pretty good now. There are no leaks whatsoever. The fuel cap as well seems pretty good. So at the end of any repair, I'd like to take the equipment outside, just start it up and make sure everything's okay. Thanks again for watching, guys. As you saw, it's not that complicated to do this repair. Always check your fuel line before you do any kind of carburetor work as well, because sometimes you can have a tiny hole in there and it's going to cause all kinds of problems. And also, guys, make sure you're following me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and have yourselves a great day.